Hey there, welcome to Synth Seeker. My name is Luke. So let's see, this is Music Making Diary number 11. I don't know how to do fingers for 11, 10, 1, 10, 1, something like that. Anyway, doing a little sound design today. As I'm moving forward working on the album, I want to specify, I want to work specifically with some hardware. This is a Novation Summit. If you've got one of these or if you've got a Peak, this may be more interesting to you today. I've been doing sort of Berlin School patch design. I've been making patches on the Summit. And I just want to share 3 variations on a theme that I've got here. What happens is I will make a sound. I'll be exploring sounds. And what happens is I usually end up tweaking them and turning them into variations. So I've got a patch here that is started out as a lead / bass / basically a monophonic voice. And that is one patch we're going to listen to. Then I turn it into sort of an ARP sort of behavior, specifically in this sort of aiming towards Berlin School, going towards space music. And then I usually turn that into a third variant that is a pad. So let me show you what I got here. All right. And here we go. So. All right, so let's take this apart a little bit. There are pieces here. I like sounds that are just kind of old school. Like, granted, there's a ton of reverb and delay on it, right? But that's because I'm heading towards space music. But not a lot of craziness going on in the sort of core of that sound. There are 3 oscillators running there. And they're all an octave apart. One's at 16 feet, one's at 8 foot, one's at 4 foot. And the 16, basically the lowest one and the highest one are wavetables out of here. Specifically, one is like a real crunchy, clangorous wavetable with a lot of stuff going on, but I filter the hell out of it, put a fast decay on it to turn it into sort of a pluck. And then the highest oscillator here is one of the glassy wavetables that's putting that sort of bell shimmer on it. You can hear it. It's real high is that sort of fluty bell sound, and low is a sort of hollow. And then the mid voice in there is just a square wave to put a little body in there. It's so right in the middle. So the lowest is a wavetable. The highest is a wavetable. So the low is like a buzzy wavetable. The highest is a glassy wavetable. And the middle one is a real round, hollow sounding square. Now there's more behind that, but for now. And I've got velocity tied to filter frequency. So if I'm playing lightly, as opposed to hard, because that allows me a certain amount of expression. And these are set as a monophonic line, so it re-triggers every time I'm not doing legato. So I like that as sort of like a lead, like a monophonic lead. So when I'm doing Berlin School, this is something I would use sometimes for a pluck. So if I turn on the delay, low velocity, high velocity, all right? Now, behind that, because this is on a summit, so that sound by itself you could do on like a peak. Okay, straightforward. If I sustain this, I'm using the second layer because this is a summit, so it's like two peaks welded together. So there's two layers I could work on. My second layer is bringing in my, right, that spacey sort of. Right, so if I isolate that sound by itself, what we're getting is this. All right, and this is the same thing, except that it's all, it's two sawtooths and then a wavetable doing a sort of a reedy sound on top. They're each an octave apart, and there's nothing, the attack is like really long, so that I want these to fade in after this. That's my bass sound, or my basic sound, and then I want that to fade in later. And then I've got the mod envelope that is doing that slow fade in. I've actually got it looping. So if I hold this note, you'll hear it go more than once. It's going to keep going. Down, back up, and down again, and back up, and down. Right, and that has a sick amount of delay and reverb on it because it's this sort of high backing piece. So that's going to get pushed way out onto the soundstage. So when I run these together, I have a lot of control. I can control using velocity. But I can also control by playing legato. I can bring in that backing voice, that second layer voice. And when I want to silence it, I just pick all my hands up, I pick all my fingers off the keys, and it clamps down on that layer 2 voice. So there it is. I'm going to pick up my fingers. So this affords me a lot of sort of playability here. So this is a lead that I'm going to use in some Berlin School style music. Maybe for plucks and for leads, a little bit of both. I could go down. Could get it down there. It's a little, gets a little bit buzzy down there, but and the other final sort of variant I did is by using the mod wheel, I will slow down, I'll increase the attack of the main lead. So here's a strike. If I bring the mod wheel up, comes in a little slower. It's easier to hear on the bass part, so here it is. Softens it. So if I bring the mod wheel all the way up, I can turn this into a sort of a slower variant on the lead. The initial note's got this long fade in, but because it's a monophonic patch, you can then play as additional notes. And if you really want, you could turn the glide way up and if you like. So that is a pluck slash lead slash bass sort of sound that we can do here. Now, if we turn on the ARP, I've got these two layers, right? And so what I do is I turn the ARP on just for the lower layer, the sort of core bass layer. And I leave the ARP off for the higher sort of fade in lead layer. And I can end up getting this sort of sound. Right, so the bottom layer A has the ARP running, layer B does not, and it's just got the lead coming in. Right. So it's not hard. Once I've defined a pluck, I can apply an ARP to it or something like that to either all the layers or just part of the layers, in this case just layer A, and pull out my, keep my layer B doing that spacey lead. Because that layer B mod envelope is looping, it's going to continue to do something organic with the timbre. All right. And then the final sort of third variant is to take this pad and basically by bringing the mod wheel up, keeping everything sort of clean. All right, bringing it down, I can use it for comping. You can tell I don't play a linear keyboard very much. The grid's over there. But I like to use these keyboards. I like to, do patch sound design on the keyboard itself, so. Now, just a little side note, each of these layers A and B, both of them are using 3 oscillators, and the oscillators are all 1 octave apart. And so one of the things that does is when you do those 3 octave spreads without doing any detuning, you're going to get something that's a little bit like an organ, just because like an organ fundamentals, when you pull down the 3, main 3 lowest or primary, 3 closest to the root, I don't know, 3 of the right next to each other drawbars, you're going to get this organ sound that's similar. So you may hear overtones of organ in here. I'm really bad at naming patches, but that reminds me of EVE Online's sort of soundtrack ambience. So I don't know, I might call it EVE. Anyway, so hey, that's what I've been working on. So this is like super short diary 11. I am doing patch design for the most part. So 3 sounds out of this, and the next day or two, I'm going to get 3 sounds out of the third wave up there, which will be interesting to compare and contrast because that's also a wavetable synth of a very different pedigree than the Summit. So, we'll get a little compare and contrast going. I'll get something built up there, and then we'll talk about it. But really, that's about it. Thanks for spending time with me. I hope this was entertaining slightly, not super informative. I'm not sharing these patches just yet. I'd like to be able to use them at least once before in a track I release before I share them. But I may share these patches in the future. And really, that's about it. All right. Hey, thanks for spending time with me. You have been watching Synth Seeker. Have a great week.